Phil Twyford. Chairman, earlier in this debate we talked about the Prime Minister's cynical comments about how Auckland homeowners were so happy about becoming wealthier because of skyrocketing house prices, and how it was so clear from those comments that that's the reason why this government has done nothing substantive or serious about the Auckland housing crisis. All we get are kind of PR-driven half measures. We talked about the spectacular failure of Nick Smith over the last few years to do anything about increasing the supply of housing in Auckland, to the extent that the housing shortage is getting worse, to the tune of 5,000 houses every year, and the Productivity Commission is projecting a shortfall of 60,000 by 2020. But, Mr Chairman, there's so much more to talk about in the housing area. Having denied for years that the rampant property speculation in Auckland has anything to do with the fact that house prices are going up on average by $500 a day, we saw just before the recent budget what this government so often does. Deny there's a problem, and then when the focus groups start to show up a bit of public concern, they wheel out a grudging half measure. And that's exactly what the budget announcement on the so-called two-year test and the Bright Line test to try to catch a few speculators. It's like that policy is basically like hunting speculators with a very small butterfly net. And John Shewan, one of the government's most respected tax advisors, he came out within days of that announcement and said it won't do anything to rein in house prices in Auckland, and it certainly won't catch very many property speculators. Meanwhile, this government is completely at sea on the question of a foreign buyers register. We've had 4 different statements from the Prime Minister, from Nick Smith, from Louise Upston and Stephen Joyce, all saying different things. And in fact, Louise Upston, I think, was the most candid. She said, it's not a foreign buyers register, it won't be public, and it won't tell us the information that's needed for this debate. Well, I say good on the Minister for at least being candid with the public, because I can't say the same for her colleagues. This government is completely in denial about the effect of property speculators, including offshore money in the Auckland housing market. They are totally in denial about it, in spite of the fact, amazingly for them, that the polls say that in the order of 70% of New Zealanders want to see a register on foreign buyers. It's good enough for David Cameron, who's saying that a register, a fully accessible and searchable register of foreign property buyers, is a priority for his government in the United Kingdom. It's good enough for David Cameron, and it's good enough for the centre-right government, the federal government in Australia, who have the same policy. But this government won't go near it. And all they've done is promised a very weak, very diluted attempt to gather a little bit of data on foreign buyers. They are completely in denial. Stephen Joyce has been going around saying that the Australian policy, which also happens to be the New Zealand Labour Party policy, of a ban on foreign buyers buying existing houses, which is currently responsible for channeling billions of dollars of investment from China into new builds. Apartments in Sydney and Melbourne are being put up like there's no tomorrow, and they're almost all funded by offshore money. That's a sensible policy that is working. Stephen Joyce has been going around saying that it's not working, that the policy's been a failure, and he's been flatly contradicted by experts in Australia who have said, actually, the federal government in Australia is completely committed to the policy and they're toughening it up. In the state of Victoria, they are jailing foreign buyers who wrought the rules there. Meanwhile, this government denies it's even a problem. Let's talk about another aspect of housing policy, and I want to say what an excellent speech it was by Materia Toure about warm, dry homes. And all I want to add, really, is that the government's announcement in this area was yet another grudging half measure.
That's right.
The public want to see mandatory standards for rental accommodation to make sure they're warm and dry. They want to see insulation standards. They want to see heating standards. But what does Nick Smith do? He allows the landlords who have avoided taking advantage of the generous taxpayer subsidy for the last few years, he's given them a 4-year grace period and very weak standards.
Matt Ducey.